Welcome aboard, campers. This is John Kolensik, high atop Mount St. Matrix, and how is everybody's day going? I don't know what the weather's like in your part of the world, and I do mean part of the world. We have right now signed on. Right now we have 75, 78. We have 87 people signed on as we speak, and people are piling on from all over the world. We had total signed up for today 286 from all parts of the globe. But the reason why I bring up the weather is because in Cleveland we are having a fantastic spring. It is just about 70 degrees and sunny here on Mount St. Matrix, and we're very happy about it. Welcome to the SOV-NOP Learning Series, known as the Sell on Value, Not on Price. We're the logical, not linear selling system. My name is John C. Kolensik. You see it phonetically down there, so you know how to say it. And then my contact information, matriximpact.com and buildyoursalesmachine.com. And for people who have been on one of our webinars before, you know how I like to do it. We like to kind of jump right in with both feet. And for people who don't, now you know. We like to jump in, and here we go. 9 out of every 10 companies lose out on over half of the total opportunities that they have to sell at a trade show. That is just, in my mind, that is an absolutely scary, frightening number. Let's just do basic math. Let's see at your trade show, let's use small numbers. Let's you say at your trade show there's only 2,000 attendees and maybe 100 people come to your booth. So you lose out on half of that. 50 people, 50 potential customers. And then depending on some different things, it can be catastrophic. Reasons range from poor planning, bad booth management, no ability to draw traffic, all the way to terrible follow-up practices and more. All things that we're going to be talking about in this series. And finally, depending on your average sales size, your average unit selling price, that I used to call it, AUSP, this is anywhere from a small fortune to 90 days of sales down the drain. Think of that. Who out there in the audience, who's that? Shakur in Kuala Lumpur. Shakur, can you afford to lose 90 days of sales? Can you? Nobody can. It's an absolutely scary number, okay? Point of the story is those are the things that we're going to be tackling in this series. But before we get to this series, the series we did just prior to this was the 3 things that can derail your sales. And those 3 things are communication, commoditization, and conversion. What you're going to see today is how and why we chose to do that webinar series first to build upon where we're going in 2012. Everything is about these 3 things. And you're going to see in trade show planning, as well as trade show execution, as well as trade show follow-up, where communication, commoditization, and conversion plays a role. And I think just by looking at those words, people can already get the gist of what the idea is, but wait till you see some of the numbers that are associated. It will absolutely, absolutely astound you. All right, so welcome aboard today. Today's topic is maximizing trade show ROI, part 1, what needs to be done pre-show. As you guys saw in the webinar announcement, this is a 3-part webinar series. Part 1 is pre-show, part 2 is during show, and part 3 will cover everything post-show. And today we're talking about pre-show. And we have our little mascot there that most everybody saw from the invitation about trade shows, and the guy that you just don't want to be at a trade show. Let's talk about who's going to be here. Obviously, you already met me, your host, John C. Kolensik, Chief Sales Officer of Matrix Impact. And then we have our subject matter experts of Patrick Jebber. He's the Master of Creative Business Design at Monsters Unlimited. Patrick, would you like to say hello to folks?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And then also we have Rob Holscher, Vice President of Prime Business Solutions. He'll be joining us too. Rob, are you online yet?
Yeah, sure am, John.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
Would you like to say hello to everybody?
Hello.
That's Rob. He's calling from the bottom of his well right now, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Before we get going, reality check. 6 business days left in Q1. Are you on target with your 2012 goals? What adjustments do you need to make? End of the day, there is only one person staring at you in the mirror, and that is you, folks. Where are you at? this is the perfect time to be looking at what needs to be done. So many times we set out these grand goals and come up with these fantastic ideas for 2012 or for the next year or the year after that. But where are you at in terms of achieving those goals? Are you there? Are you close? Are you blowing the number out? Are you so far down that you've got to reassess and do something different? Take the time now. Don't wait till the year's half gone. Don't wait till the year's 3/4 gone, because if you do, the year will be gone. Start today. And remember, as Michael Jackson said, he, man in the mirror, or lady in the mirror, because there's quite a few ladies out there too, so no disrespect. All right. Webinar how-tos. You can hear us, but we can't hear you. Now there's occasion where I might choose somebody and unmute you. Feel free then at that time to talk, and I'll let you know that you're unmuted. We don't do it a whole lot because it can get out of hand sometimes with too many folks, but we do it every once in a while. You can ask me a question. If you see to your toolbar, on most people it's to the right of their screen, you have a little toolbar where you can chat over questions. And you can let people know, or you can ask me whatever you might want. You can ask any one of our subject matter experts any questions that you want. You can also chat something to me specifically by choosing me specifically in your drop-down list, as well as choosing whether it be Patrick or Rob as well, if you want to get something directly to them. And then the last thing is, we stay on the webinar typically anywhere from, 20 minutes to, an hour after answering additional questions. We've had times where we've been on even longer than that. Just depends on, the depth that we get into that day. But, we're willing to stay on as long as people are willing to stay on and ask questions. We will be there for you. Yep, I lost the screen for a second there. Yes, I know that. Okay, it should be back now. Okay. So let's get started. We've got a lot to do today, so there's not going to be a whole lot of banter in going forward. I want to make sure that I get you everything that's necessary in the pre-show planning that you need. And let's just start with that real quick so you understand, why I believe it's so critical. There are few things that you can make such a huge impact on your sales as going to a trade show. There's also very, very, very few things that you can also hurt yourself as going to a trade show in terms of money lost and lost opportunities. So I'm going to make sure that you get every piece of information we possibly can from our experts today. Starting with the critical pre-show list, or as I like to call it, putting the cart before the horse. Too many times what happens when we're prepping for a trade show is we start thinking, what are we going to do when we're at the trade show, and how are we going to talk to customers and those types of things, and we forget a lot of the stuff that goes into it. Now, as the years have gone on, we've gotten more and more sophisticated, no question about it, all right? We've gotten better and better and better at knowing what is out there and what we need to do and all those types of things. But it amazes me to this day how many people make some catastrophic mistakes when it comes to planning a trade show. And those are the kind of things that we're going to hit on, the things that we see most often as a group of subject matter experts. And just so you know, a lot of the examples you're going to hear today are so fresh, they are 24 hours old from trade shows that were just attended yesterday. That's how fresh some of the examples you're going to hear are today. All right, so let's start off. First up, theme. Okay. What do I mean by a theme? Well, it's like anything else. You think of a theme, from a TV show or whatever, and think of some of the most famous themes that you've ever heard, whether it be Bonanza, bum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba ba, or whether it be something from more recently, like the Mission Impossible series, with that very, 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 very recognizable sound, bum ba ba bum ba. Well, when you go to a trade show, your theme has to be just as consistent and just as strong. And you might say, well, gosh, John, we already have a theme. It's called our mission statement, or we already have a theme and it's called our logo, or we already have a theme, blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is when you go to a trade show, you've got to be thinking even bigger than that. What is the theme? What is that message for that trade show? Is it, bringing something to a certain segment of the market, to certain customers? Is it trying to open up a new door? Are you launching a new product that you want to focus on? I don't care what it is, but whatever that theme is, it's got to be consistent and it's got to flow all the way through that one trade show. When you try and put too many messages in there, your communication gets muddled and the message doesn't get through. Person might hear a word, an attendee might hear something else, but they don't hear it. There's got to be a common thread, one theme that ties everything together all throughout that trade show. Next, make it an event. All right, and you might say, well, gosh, John, yeah, it is an event already. It's a trade show. All right, well, I know it's a trade show and I know it's an event already, but you've got to make your booth an event. You've got to remember that crowds draw crowds. And what do I mean by that? Anytime you see a bunch of people gathered around, something, whether it be on the street or wherever you're at, what's the first thing that you do? Patrick, if you see a bunch of people gathered around looking at something, do you just walk by them or do you wonder what they're actually doing? Patrick? Yellow. Uh-oh. Patrick? Patrick?
Okay. Yeah, I'm good now.
All right.
I make an attempt to walk by because I don't want to be the looky-loo, but I end up I look just like everyone else.
Exactly. And it's a natural human thing. Crowds draw crowds. And thank you so much for letting me sweat there for 20 seconds. I appreciate that. A little bit of flop sweat's never bad for a webinar. Because you guys, that's the nice thing about a webinar. You guys can't see me sweating over here, but right now, it's 80 degrees in Cleveland and I'm just dripping with it. But anyways, crowds draw crowds. People want to be around and know what's going on. If you've got crowds around your booth, fantastic. That's what you need to do. But how do you do that? Okay? You've got to have little things all throughout the trade show that you're doing at your booth. When I say little things, meaning it can't be just one big event, all right? And there are a lot of different things that you can do. All right? Give you a couple ideas here. You can have author signings. You can have mini trainings. You can have a strategic industry ally or an independent expert speaker. These are all good examples of things that you can do there. And if you need more, obviously, give me a call. I can help you with that. But you can do these things. And please understand what I'm saying. I'm not advocating cheesy toy giveaways or fishbowl drawings or something like that. What I'm saying is everything you need to do, you need to tie to your theme. Something that gives a good business reason to come and see you, okay? And these people are out there. Are you going to tell me you can't find somebody who's a strategic industry ally who wouldn't like to be part of your booth, for them to speak at your booth for, 10 minutes to 15 minutes every 2 or 3 hours? It's crazy. Of course they would. Now you have an event that's going on all the time, every couple hours, and you're drawing the crowds. Some are going to be larger than others. For instance, this webinar, we've got 277 people that signed in. We've got about 200 online right now, but it's not as big as the last one. We had about 300 some. We were over 300 for the last one. Point, you're going to have different size crowds all the time, okay? But that's okay. The point is having a lot of them. So you're always drawing more people and not just making it one big bang event. That's always the mistake. Before I go on, I've been talking for a little bit. Anybody want to shoot over a question, anything that I've said so far that they've got a question about, anything like that? Anything that just sounds nutty. That old guy is silly. Okay. Next, let's talk about logistics. All right. Now, when I talk about logistics, we know a lot of the stuff that comes with it already, and we probably have some pretty good folks, that work for us that take care of a lot of these things. And we know some of those things that are out there, things like electricity, things like having internet access, things like having carpeting, that kind of stuff, okay? All right, we got that. But what about some of the bigger stuff, okay? And when I say bigger stuff, I don't mean grander stuff. I mean bigger things that can make a difference. And here's one of those things, and you're going to say, gosh, this is a bigger thing. How about come here, you. Come here, you. What are you doing to me? How about rolls of tape? How many of you have been at a trade show when you've had to tape something down, whether it be with duct tape or something else, and you just needed it? All right. How about Windex and paper towels? How many times have we got to a trade show and forgot to bring that, and we've had to wipe things down? How about something, I don't know, it could be something, just as silly as a screwdriver. Oh, for the want of a screwdriver, has many a trade show booth fallen apart. Little things, rolls of tape, Windex, towels, screwdrivers, these little things, okay? Most of the time we take care of the big stuff. We make sure that we put in 6 months out for our space. We make sure that we get electric there. We make sure that there's going to be carpeting there. We make sure that the union people are there to move whatever they move around. We make sure that all that stuff gets down. But sometimes it's those little things that are actually big things that actually kill us. How about something like this? Ever think about having a water cooler in your booth? Something simple, all right? What's nicer than having a water cooler in your booth where somebody can come in? Now you might say, well, gosh, John, we give out bottles, we do this. But what do people do around a water cooler? Hey, Rob, what's one of the oldest things in the book that people talk about they do in the water cooler at a business?
You talk about the weather.
Yeah, they talk about stuff. They get together and they talk about stuff. Now you have a water cooler in your booth. People come together and they can start talking about stuff. And if you're doing your job right, hopefully what they're going to be doing is talking about you and the things that you do and how that you can help them, all right? Water cooler, something simple like that, all right? And like I said, you don't think about it all the time, but it is one of those little basic things that you may want to think about, you know, a water cooler. Now, one thing that I'm not going to put in there is chairs. Never going to put chairs in there because you should not be sitting down at a trade show. You might say, well, gosh, John, should we invite our customer to sit? No, you shouldn't. Why? They sit, they're apt to stay. You might say, well, gosh, John, don't you want them to stay? No, you don't. You want to get them in, qualify them, get their pertinent information, and then get to the next person. Many a trade show lead is lost because you spend too much time with somebody. You may get that one person, but you gain that one person at the expense of 3 others, all right? Logistics. Think about the things that go into it. And it's always those little things, rolls of tape, Windex, screwdriver, a water cooler. We get that big stuff down pretty much. Now, if you guys need the real check-down list for this, I've got a check-down list that covers virtually everything you can ever think of for a trade show logistic-wise. I can get that off to you, all right? Just wanted to hit some of these issues that people miss. Now, one of my favorites, staffing. Thou shalt not understaff by any way or imagination. Never, ever, 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 ever should you understaff. And you might say, well, what's understaff? Well, I can't tell you that until I know what trade show you're going to. I can tell you this, if you find out what the history of the trade show is, and you know how many people were there, or if you were at the trade show last year and they can give you an expectation of what they expect next year, you can make the correct assessment off of that. But too many times people try to save money by understaffing, and what you wind up doing is lose that money by understaffing. It's one of the biggest mistakes you can make because you're like, well, you know, last year we were just about right, and this show's going to be a little bit, we can go with one less person. And that one less person could be the difference. And I'm not telling you exactly how many people. I am telling you I can help you if I know the numbers, and we can ask the right questions of the trade show people and consult your records to find out what you had. But I will tell you, when you understaff, you lose money. Another thing about staffing that you got to know, all right? For those of you out there who don't watch the show, there's a show out there called Mad Men. It's premiering this Sunday with the new season. Very, very excited about it, all right? Love the show Mad Men. Well, in the end of the end of the second year, the lead character, Don Draper, and one of the account managers, Pete Campbell, were going to a trade show out in California. They're based in New York, and they were going to a trade show out in California. Well, to go to the trade show, they were all excited, blah, blah, blah. You know, let's do this, let's have fun, let's go to California. So they get there, and they're, you know, these 2 guys from New York standing out at a swimming pool in the sun, and it's so nice. You know, it's winter back in New York. And Pete Campbell, the younger guy, says, come on, Don, let's go swimming. Let's take a little advantage while we're out here. And Don looks at him and says, this is a business trip. This isn't a vacation, unless you like me to make it a vacation, and I can have that arranged. What's my point? People forget that when they're going to New Orleans, or they're going to California, or they're going to Vegas, especially some of these places, that they're going on business. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to be excited to go to a location. But the number one thing about staffing is you're going on a business trip, not on a vacation. And if you want to go see the replica Eiffel Tower, if you want to go see the Hard Rock Cafe, if you want to go down to the Riverwalk in New Orleans, if you want to do these certain things, you can do those things. But remember, it's a business trip. And when you go about staffing for this, make sure that you're picking people based on that. Travel costs, opportunity costs are insignificant to overall lost business, and more importantly, the image of your company is being too cheap to staff properly. Before I go on, questions? Anybody? All right, let's get into attendance. One of my personal favorites, being that I'm a sales and marketing guy, all right? This is, in my book, the most important aspect. All right. Without attendance, what's a trade show? I mean, if you go to a trade show and nobody shows up, where you're really at the trade show. If a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, did the tree really fall? That's the point, folks. If you were here at this trade show and nobody goes, it doesn't really matter. And what people do so very often is they think, well, you know, most everybody knows that we're going to this. That's one of my favorite lines. All our customer knows that we go to these trade shows, or here's one of the worst, or even worse one. These are the biggest shows in our industry. Everybody goes to them. Both of those responses are huge miscalculations, all right? Huge. And even if you don't take into account gas prices, travel headaches, even, you know, don't take into account 9/11 still, this mindset is setting you up for failure. So the question is how do we make sure that we guarantee attendance? Well, there's a couple things, okay? Now, I'm going to be talking about some of the basics that have to happen, and then we're going to be going into a little more detail and giving you some great ideas in just a few minutes here. So some of the basics. First thing is have formal invitations made. If you're going somewhere and you're going to spend some money on it and you're going to make a big deal about it and you've got a theme going, and you're going to have author signings or you're going to have speakers there, have a formal invitation made so people can actually see that and they can say, wow, look at this. This is pretty cool. Don't just send off something in the mail, some silly flyer. Make it formal. Make it a real invite that you are inviting them. All right? What is the theme? What are the events? What will the attendees take from the show? Remember, people don't care what your products are as a general rule. They're tuned into WIIFM, my favorite radio station. What's in it for me? That's what they're interested in. They don't care that you're launching the next new widget. What they care about is what that next new widget does. What will they be taking for it? Using an invitation not only forces you to be very succinct, but it also forces you to make sure that they're able to read it in a short blurb and not some big splashy, blah, blah, blah. Short, sweet, succinct. That's what you're trying to do. Next stuff about attendance, okay? Let's be creative and make it a series, okay? Make it a series. They just don't get one invitation. If they get any less, if your people get any less than 3 touches from you before a show, then you're making a huge mistake. They've got to know that you're coming. They've got to know you're coming. And what happens to the first one? Okay, they might see it and set it aside. Then the next thing comes, the next touch comes, and it's something different. And they see it, hey, maybe that's something, and maybe they toss that one out. And then the next touch is maybe a phone call to them. You've got to make it a series. You've got to make it something that they're seeing. It can't just be one and done. You make it one and done, and I promise you, you're one and done. It's over. Make it a series. Send regular correspondence tied to the theme specific. Could even be a small promotional item. Rob's going to be talking about some really neat things here in a second to integrate into this whole idea. You should also consider conducting some pre-trade show events, okay? Webinars or live in territory presentations. If the show you're going to is big enough, if you're going to something that is really the industry standard, do some webinars to get people excited, to kind of get people the feeling of what's going to happen. And if they go to this webinar and they get excited, it not only does it's a touch for you, but it also gets them the juices flowing to actually go to the trade show. It helps you on so many different levels. And depending on what kind of company you are, do some in-territory things too, all right? Have some things at a hotel, or if you have regional offices, invite some people over to those regional offices and get the name, get the idea out there. It's the only way to do that. You got to contact your customer base at least those 3 times, okay? Mailings, emails, whatever it is. Then you've got to schedule at least one follow-up call, okay? One follow-up call minimum. Who should be making these calls? The sales staff, okay? Do not shunt this off to the receptionist. Do not shunt this off to the marketing assistant or the sales coordinator. The sales staff should be making these calls, okay? Why should the sales staff be making these calls? Because they should be scheduling booth meetings, breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, dinner meetings, recreational meetings. And if you're having an issue with scripting, let me know. I've developed a library of these things. Sales staff needs to make these calls. They need to be planning that trade show attendance. They need to be the ones getting on touch because they should be the ones that are going to be meeting these people in the booth. Don't shunt it off to an assistant or to a coordinator. Make it the sales staff. Make it that person. That's the person that should be doing those. Questions on attendance? Oh, Rob, I got a question from Rob. Rob from Detroit, what is your question? Good one, Rob. Rob asked, how much money does it cost to do a series of invitations? Well, the answer varies, and I can't give you an exact, but what I can tell you is it depends. And what I mean by that is it depends on what you're doing and the different things that you're doing. You can be very creative and keep it low cost, but I promise you, if you're going to a trade show and let's throw a round number out. Let's say you're planning on spending $20,000 or $30,000. Let's just say $20,000 for travel, for booth space, and everything else, all the other stuff that goes with it. If you're not willing to invest $2,000 to $3,000 in doing some marketing for it, don't go. You're wasting your $20,000 or $30,000. It's an absolute waste of time. If you're going to go to the show, go to the show. If you're going to do something, do it right. Don't do it half-butt. Do it all the way. I know I can't give you any exact, Robs, but if you contact me, send me an email or give me a call, I'll make sure I'll give you some specifics. All right? Good. Okay. So, trade show attendance. I gave you some of the basics. All right. Now I'm going to bring in one of our subject matter experts, Rob Holscher, and he's going to go over some trade show traffic building ideas with some really, really cool things out there. Rob, take it away.
Great. Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. Piggybacking along then what John was talking about is the importance of having attendance at your shows. Let's look at some numbers real quick just to put everything into context. 92% of our visitors at shows are not contacted by an exhibitor. That's kind of surprising, especially when you look at how important it is to be doing those kinds of things. However, 80% of the people do plan out who they're going to go visit. So with only 20% of exhibitors doing any sort of promotion, you wonder how those 80% of the people are planning. How are they deciding, what booths they're going to go see? And they always end up making a top 10 list. It's also important to remember that the cost of the trade show lead is really about a third of the cost of any other lead you're going to have. And a lot of that is gained because if you think about it, if you've got a booth and if you're lucky enough to get 200 or 300 people to stop by, what would it have cost you throughout the year making cold calls on that many people? With all the time it would have taken, gas expense, other marketing materials. So when you think about it, you've got a lot of people that are potential customers and certainly good prospects stopping by your booth, and so it's a really good idea to do that promotion to get people there so that they want to come to your booth. So as we're looking at some of the things we're going to talk about, a lot of them it involves handing things out or using an incentive to try to get people to your booth. So let's look at some ground rules as far as using promotions in your incentive activities. The promotions must tie together with your overall theme. There's no question about that. That really helps reinforce the message that you're making with the gifts you're handing out. You should really try to stay away from one big gift. If you go with multiple gifts, you're going to have more winners. You're not going to have a bunch of people standing around at 4 o'clock to see who won the iPad. What you're going to have is one winner and a bunch of other people that are going to feel like a loser because they weren't the one that won. Another thing is that the promotions and games, they really need to tie back with your brand. So a lot of that can be handled through the graphics that you print on the things you hand out, but also if you get creative, you can think of and you tie in different products specific, to what you're trying to promote. And another thing to remember is that really it is human nature to feel some sense of obligation to the person that gives you something. Of course it's relative to, how the person perceives the gift that they're receiving, but if you hand that person whatever it is you're handing them in your booth, you have a chance to ask a couple questions right then and there, and those questions really should be about qualifying the person to determine, whether or not, what other action you need to take with them and put them into your sales process. And then,
Rob,
of course, like anything, follow up, follow up, follow up.
And Rob, before you go on, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
About the qualify and the follow-up, two things, just so everybody knows out there. Like I said, we're going to be talking about, the next webinar that we'll be having. We'll be going into specific questions that you can ask. So when you have that giveaway, we're not going to do that today. We're not going to talk about what specific questions you should ask. So I'm going to kind of cut those questions off. I already saw a couple of them coming in. That's why I jumped in, Rob. I apologize. But the specific questions, we'll be covering those next time, as well as follow-up. That will be covering on the third one. So we'll be talking about that. So as those things come up, what Rob's doing today is kind of laying the groundwork for where we're going. So just so everybody knows.
Great. Well, moving on, attending a trade show, really can be exciting, and people get really charged up about going to them. If you can send out something that has a show location theme tie-in, that's going to really help build the anticipation with the recipient. And, especially if you can, if it's something you're going to first want to invite them to your booth, and this is why, and then you're giving them this and helping to build that anticipation, like I mentioned. But it's really, can really be exciting and creative. Digital printing is so prevalent these days that you can do, small runs of things in full color and create packages very easily. So it might look like, oh, wow, that's pretty expensive, but you'd be surprised what you can do. And, if you think about it, with people, these are good brainstorming sessions to have with your team. You can really come up with some creative things, and it can easily be done. So,
Rob, is there anything else about the the bigger picture? When you're thinking about the theme and stuff, is there anything else like locations or anything like that, or?
Well, yes, that has a lot to do with it. I mean, that's the trade show tie-in to the location. If you're talking about New Orleans or Vegas, Orlando, those are places that really lend itself to have a lot of things that are specific to those locations that you can incorporate into the item. So, well, hey, if you want to show something that most people probably haven't seen yet, you can send them out a Litho Decoder. It's a game piece that requires the person to bring the piece into your booth, where you have like the second half of the game piece, where when the two get married up, an image projects through. It indicates whether or not the person is a winner or not. So these pieces can be mailed out individually. They could be used as a media insert. There's a lot of ways to hand these things out.
Rob, are these? Oh, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt. Are these things? I just got a question in. Are these things completely customizable? Meaning, except for the decoding part, I mean, you can completely customize it to your company and your brand and everything.
You sure can. That's one of the great things about them. You take these pieces. It's a lot of times they're 8.5 by 11 or smaller, 8.5, 5.5. You've got the game piece, which is usually about a 2 by 3, and then the rest of the material can be used to brand. Give your message, tie into the, introduce the theme of your booth, with that, and invite them to come play. And the only way that they're going to see if they're a winner or not is if they bring that by your booth and place it behind it. So it's something neat, because when you see it, they're not going to be able to tell what it says because you need the other thing. Another variation of this game is done through a mobile device, where you get a game piece by texting a code to a text, and then it returns a URL. You click on the URL, and you can then see the game piece. And actually, these days, too, this also works with a QR code. So you could say, scan this QR code in order to receive your game piece, and then stop by booth number 470 and see if you're a winner. And when they come to your booth, again, you've got a handheld piece that you hold up to their phone, and the two things together reveal a message. And if you see at the bottom of the slide there, you could actually text to 23000, the keyword in all caps, hit 9, and that'll give you a piece that we did from a closed promotion from a couple years ago. Kawasaki did that. And it's really neat. And the thing about it is you can have a sign up even in your booth then. So if people didn't receive notification ahead of time, they can scan the QR code or type in the short code and get the game piece and play right then.
Is this the kind of thing, Rob, that you can put up a sign in your booth? Would you talk about doing something like this with if you were a promotional sponsor, or you had a banner or something like that, at the show's entrance or around the show, that kind of thing?
Sure, you could have this thing anywhere, because a lot of people are still fascinated by QR codes, and especially if you say, hey, scan this code to see if you're a winner, and then when they get the code scanned, they get that piece, and it says, oh, I've got to stop by whatever booth number to try to get that verified to see if they are a winner.
And just so everybody knows, I just did the text, and this is what I got back. It says click HTTP. Obviously it gives me a link for my smartphone. Your mobile decoder game piece code F8S6D, which is my code. Obviously visit your local retailer. Blah blah blah. All right. So it came back within just a couple seconds. Decode your message to see what you won. Ooh, I can't wait to see, Rob. Can't wait to see what I won.
Yep, we'll have to dust off some prizes for you, because that promotion ended a little while ago.
I could use a nice little baseball hat, just so you know.
Another key thing, one other point I just wanted to make about the mobile decoder is that when it scans through and the URL is hit, it actually keeps track. It scans just like a lot of your mobile websites do these days, where you can keep track of statistics. So it tells the phone number. And also tells the time of day. You can get a report after the end of the promotion that will give you all the details about how many times it was scanned, and what the phone numbers were. So you've got those then as an opportunity to further mine down the road. When
you say phone number, you're talking about their cell phone from their smartphone, correct?
Phone. Yes.
The
phone number that scanned it.
Yeah, and I think everybody out there who's listening knows how crucial getting cell phone numbers are, because so many people, that's their main way of contacting, whether it be business or B2C. So many people, work off of their cell and smartphones that information is the toughest to get. You might get somebody's office phone, but you live in their voicemail. You get their cell phone, and bang, you get them, as they're driving, you get them whatever. So that's crucial information. That was a good one there. Didn't know that did that, Rob.
Sure. But another, so you do need a smartphone in order to take part in that promotion. But if somebody stops by your booth, say, and they didn't have a smartphone, and they're like, well, shoot, I can't play the game. Well, actually you can. There's a web decoder version of the same thing, where if they are given a piece, they can go onto a website, they could register on that website, so another opportunity to collect more data, and then they can take that piece and hold it up to the screen. You see that blue square rectangle up there. You hold that piece up to it, it'll reveal a message. And then it'll also give them, if they did win, there's additional pages loaded on there they could then redeem. There's also a code printed on the card, so that they type that in, and that verifies that they were a winner. And then they can take part in it. So, you've got lots of different ways to use the same idea.
And you can make these screens basically anything you want. So it could be a mini site where whatever you wanted. You could do anything you wanted. Is that right?
Yes. As long as you're making the site, we're making it up. We can customize it to whatever images and text you'd like to have on there. So another way to, this is another way to send something out ahead of time. Give them an incentive to come by your booth. In this case, this is a playing card idea. This was just used recently. It was sent out to about 1,000 people. A little under 300 actually came by the booth and played the game. So, that's a pretty good response rate, 28 to 30%. And so it was pretty effective. And, like all of these games I'm talking about, the number of winners and who wins what prizes, all of that, is decided, by the person, that's putting the game together. So another thing about this piece is that it has lots of real estate for you to, give your message, talk about the different, whatever it is you want to talk about, why they should stop by your booth, other things you want to promote. So there's a lot of good opportunity, to do some marketing here on several different levels. Along the same lines, this is a black light idea. There's an image printed in this box. in the middle on the center panel, that can only be viewed under a black light. So, they've got to bring it by the booth to verify whether they won. And again, a lot of real estate to do some more marketing to. And then this is an idea that actually has a call to action before the show, whereas you're inviting them to, you're giving them instructions to go online to make a personalized luggage tag. They upload their favorite photo, so it'll be something that's, just personal to them. The badge itself, the luggage tag, is branded to your brand. You can see on this example here, it's at the very top. And they're told that they need to stop by the booth to pick up their luggage tag. So this promotion would need to be done, 4 to 6 weeks out before the show. So the luggage tag is going to be made and sent to you, and then you bring them to the show.
What if they don't pick up the luggage tag at the show, Rob? What can you do?
Well, that's a great opportunity there to make another touch with the person. You could send it to them, you drop it off to them. It's a really good reason. I think they'll take your phone call when you're offering them the luggage tag that they ordered that has a picture on it that's, dear to them. So it's a nice way to put a personalized touch on it. Well, John talked earlier about, having a crowd by your booth. Well, this is certainly one way to draw a crowd. People love to see people playing games. They love to play games. And there's a lot of opportunity here to not only just take this game for itself, but rebrand the game. It's your product's prize wheel. You're going to roll the dice, roll your prize dice. So, a lot of these things can be, branded towards, your products. An interesting way to handle like the prize wheel is to, ask the participants a question whose answer might be right there behind you on your trade show booth. You're promoting at the show your lead product that now comes in 3 different sizes. So you ask the person, hey, if you want to win something, you got to answer a question. How many sizes does our main product come in? So you can interact with them, using your products as the focus.
And here's the thing, guys, too. I was telling you about yesterday being at a trade show. I was at something called the Electro Expo up here at the IX Center in Cleveland. And 2 booths had the prize wheel. One booth did it just right. The other booth did it just wrong. The just wrong booth did it where they were giving out tchotchkes. So every time you spun it, you got your little squeezy ball or your pen or your little magnetic clip or whatever it was. The other booth did it in a really cool way. They won, whether it be a sample pack of wires that an electrical contractor can use, whether it be a specific tool that they could use, whether it be a day of consultation with the particular business, but it was all things that were tied to their business. Who do you think had the bigger crowd? And and that was the funny thing. Not only did the booth that did it right have the bigger crowd, but the booth that had the bigger crowd was a smaller, smarter company. And I'll tell you who they were in a second. The booth who did it wrong was called, wait for it, Progressive Insurance. It was the worst prize wheel you've ever seen, and they're one of the biggest companies around. The company that did it right was a company called Erico, okay, a smaller company, much, much smaller company than Progressive. Point of the story is one company did it just right, and they're much smaller, so it doesn't matter what size you are. It's about doing it right.
Right. So let's reiterate what we talked about with the 5 rules, because that's really important, and maybe now it can bring it more into context. By tying your games together with your theme, we talked about a lot of examples of how you can, have lots of real estate on those printed pieces to, promote the theme of your event and how the promotion ties into it. We are suggesting, with this that you have the opportunity to give away a lot of different things, have multiple winners. You could have everybody be a winner. It just depends on the type of product that you want to hand out as prizes, the cost, and that. So as we spoke about, all these things do tie back to your brand based on the things that are printed on the pieces. And as you're handing them, they're winnings. you know, it's a great time to be like, to ask them a question that's going to focus on being able to qualify.
And you know what, absolutely. And what, you know, what Rob's, you know, what we're talking about here is these touches, these ways to stay in contact. So when I say having a series, something could be a formal invitation, then they could get a game piece, and then the follow-up, and ba-boom, ba-boom. All of these things tied together, and they don't have to be super high cost. They can be just, you know, as much as you want to spend to it, but it's really only limited by your creativity or what we can help you come up with. Point of the story, you know, is the more touches, the more unique ways you have to stay in touch with them, the better chance you have of actually getting them in the booth, which is what it's all about. Rob, thank you so much. Please stay on the line as questions come up. We'll make sure that you jump in here, okay?
Great, sure. Thank you.
All right, let's keep rolling along then. Next up, the 3 commandments of booth design. 3 commandments of booth design. First commandment, no blockade walls between you and the attendees. If you actually, if you see in this picture here, the gap between on the left side and the gap on the right side, the gap on the left side is just about 18 inches, and the gap on the right side is about, I'm sorry, the gap on the left side is about 18 inches, and the gap on the right side is about 24 inches. How do I know? One of the tchotchkes I won from Progressive was a yardstick, and I was able to take out and measure, and because there was nobody in there, I was able to measure the exact space. But my point is this. You've got 10 by 10 area, folks, okay? You've got all this space. And why do people sit there and they want to sit there and not use this space that they have right in here? Why do you want to keep customers from coming into you? Everybody wants to get closer. Everybody wants to come and talk to you. Create that more personal contact, but you can't do it if you've got this big blockade and the room for maybe, you know, a 6-year-old juvenile getting in on one side and a toddler getting in on the other side. It's never going to happen. No blockade walls between you and the attendees. Commandment number 2, don't kill your display with everything ever associated with your business. This guy had everything up there. I mean, we've got words here. We've got a display here. We've got some picture here and some other stuff here. And we've got this table, blockade, again, stopping from people getting in. Why do people think that they have to have a Scrabble game up on their display for people actually to stop? How are you going to read that? I mean, if you see where I'm located, I'm maybe 2 feet away from this table, and I'm taking that picture, and you can't even see the writing from there. I mean, it's impossible. So how can anybody else read it? You got 2 problems. You got the blockade, and you got too much writing. Don't kill your display with a Scrabble display. Keep it simple. You have a theme. You have a brand. Stay within yourself. Final commandment, the 3rd one, if you can't afford to have your booth professionally designed, you should not be spending money on a trade show. This, my friends, is not a professionally designed booth. This is somebody who put some things together on cards and got some pictures and got some Velcro and stuck it on a piece of display board that cost probably maximum $100, all right? Why are you going to sit there and spend all the money it costs to go to a trade show when you're going to let your booth look like this, okay? You just should not. If you can't afford to have your booth professionally designed, you should not be spending money on a trade show. And hark, that is where our next subject matter expert comes in, Patrick Jebber, to talk about booth design. Patrick?
Hello, everyone, and thank you, John, for that lovely introduction.
There you go.
Trade show branding, right? And we talk about this all the time. We talk about branding. Go back, John.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We all know what branding is, right? It's every connection, every touch, every relationship, any and every moment, right, that your customers interact with your brand. In case you're wondering, yes, trade show exhibits fall into that category, right? So let's talk about trade show branding, because the branding is essential when talking about successful trade show exhibitors. So go ahead, John. Now you can go.
Thank you.
So what do we always say? We always say consistency, right? The big thing, right, it's the #1 rule of branding. Once you have an established brand, every piece of the marketing puzzle should fit together and work together like twins or triplets, identical, not fraternal, right? All branding should convey the same message because they should all look alike. They should all look the same. Whenever somebody sees it, it should look identical to other things that they've seen. Any trade show booths should follow that rule. And while these 3 guys aren't a good representation of how your booth attendees or your staff should present themselves in a booth, they do all look the same and generally convey the same message. They should actually all be smiling but you get the idea. So sometimes I think it always helps to cover common mistakes when translating a company's brand into a trade show booth visually, right? Because when you see pictures or photos of things that you shouldn't do, it helps to visualize what the common mistakes. So before we begin this visual story of bad examples, in no way is it intended to offend people who have trade show booths that resemble these examples. But it's meant to point out the do's and don'ts, the constructive criticism, if you will. So
that was politically correct message number 435. Thank you, Patrick.
That's right. So not branding, right? To be honest, I don't know what this is, but it's a very common mistake in trade show booths. Unfortunately, it's not branding, and but it's likely consistent with their other marketing initiatives. You know, there's nothing there that really looks like it's a brand of any sort. Go ahead and... Okay, so this is not branding, right? First of all, we can't make out the simplest of branding goals in the booths, which are the logos, the brand identity. If you look at the exhibit on the left, it lists countless services, right, in detail. You can see them on those trade show graphics. Now, do they have one thing going for them? There is a monitor, right, and they can grab the attention of the attendees depending on what the presentation looks like. But overall, the presence of the booth is unimpressive, right? You wouldn't stop for that. It doesn't catch your eye. And the booth on the right fails to showcase their brand as well. They make the same mistake that many exhibitors do, the placement of the portfolio images, right? They think that image is going to tell the story of what their company does, but they're failing to realize that the real goal of that booth is to pull them in, and those images just aren't doing it. They're not striking enough. And, you know, they're just Velcroed up, like John was talking about earlier.
And there's 2 chairs in there. Don't sit down. Do not sit in your trade show booth.
Yeah, it's meant to visually reel people in, so your booth exhibitors and staffing can continue the conversation that your booth started, right? So, these we got a lot of them here, and there is such a thing as wrong branding, right? A wrong way to present your brand. It's evident by these booths, right? Top left, right? I'll just give you some examples. Where's the logo? You could barely see it. And on all the images that they present there, there's really nothing there that is a very strong brand. There's too much going on in the top middle one. John showed that example earlier. You can't even begin to decipher what you're supposed to look at first, and that is a common mistake. The brand is on the table. If you look, it's on the skirt around the table, not very easily viewable by passerbys, right? Especially if there are others in front of the booth like that person there is standing to the left. And the top right, entering this booth would be a nightmare, like John was talking about. There's no one there to greet you, for one. It's empty, and the small space to get in there, the blocking. The bottom left, scattered images, lots of words, someone on the phone. These are all things. The people even in the booth are an extension of your brand, so you need to make sure that everything really works together, and that's what we're trying to hit on. Bottom middle, there's way too much information. Granted, they have professional graphics in there, but there's too much information, right? Bottom right, again, way too much. Too small, and there's really no branding. You can see the logo on the top right, but it's poorly executed, and it's really hard to see and make out what you're supposed to look at.
Yeah, one of the things that I always harp on, when it comes to all these. Well, God bless you, whoever that was. Holy mackerel! Because there's so many words, you're counting on the thought process for the person who puts these things together with too many words. They're counting on those words selling everything. Well, that's why you staff correctly. That's why you put salespeople in the booth. You want them to be communicating your brand. As Patrick said, everything in there is an extension of your brand. So that joker over there on the phone, I'm sorry I'm so, tight on these guys, but it just irritates me when I see people talking on the phone in a booth instead of talking to customers. It's your job as a person manning the booth to explain what the company does and what your products can do. All these words, there is no way somebody can get exactly what you do. They might be able, if they get close enough and spend 20 minutes reading it, that they might get through it, but it's about who should be communicating the message.
Right, and you know, it's like a billboard, right? It's the same premise. I mean, you have that split second to grab somebody's attention, and a booth should function very similar. And I think the common mistake or the common problem is that, you know, not to get off, you know, topic, but this happens primarily in businesses, just like they design their ads, they design their booths, right? Because they look at it as real estate. Like, I have this set amount of space to put graphics on. I need to fill it with everything and anything that I could possibly imagine about my company, like you mentioned, that top middle, you know. That is the absolute wrong way. I mean, branding has to be, again, simple, straightforward, and it has to convey a message, but it has to do it in a way that hits a person in a short amount of time. This stuff is taking way too long, right? So I wanted to show a couple good examples. Obviously, this is a large undertaking. This is a gigantic booth. But booths are about creating an experience, right? Branding is all about the experience. This booth has a price tag, and I know exhibitors don't have that kind of budget, but I'll show you a couple more on the next slide that, you know, are relatively inexpensive. I mean, obviously the one on the left it's probably a medium, but you can see there that it has a very open area, and it does make a couple of mistakes that John talked about, which is it has seats, but I think this booth is trying to clearly do something different than what most booths do, and I believe that they were giving a lecture at this one.
Yeah, this one, yeah, so that's exactly right. Yeah, that's why it has seats. That's why I don't have a problem with this one, because the seats here are for the audience, not for the the staff to be sitting down.
But it's very clear and concise. I mean, you have a brand, and you have a display, and you have the presenter, and that's it, right? On the right-hand side, you know, it's a much smaller booth, and it's kind of crammed. It does some of the things wrong with, you know, you have a barrier between you and the person. But I like this, you know, it's simple. It's the background is just white. It's got the logo. So it doesn't have to be full of amazing visual graphics. You know, there are some things that every booth can do better. You know, I probably wouldn't put the flags so close to the logo and things like that on the right, but it gets the idea across that, you know, there is a way to do things on a budget. But the key is, right, is consistency. And we always hit on this. I mean, we preach this all the time. You know, every piece should be consistent with your brand. So if it looks like a bunch of images velcroed up to a booth, and that's not what your brand looks like, then don't do it. Do something different. So now you've seen a few visual examples, right? Let's get to the root of the problem, right? And why is it that so many trade show booths suffer from improper branding, and why do branding efforts fail, right? Well, I mean, there are many reasons, a few of which are, it could be that the people in charge of the exhibit don't know what branding is and how it can affect the company. I mean, if you have people who are running your trade show booths, I've seen it before in big corporations, they have, you know, an admin running the trade show efforts, and they don't necessarily know what they should be doing in that booth. There might not be an established brand in place. For smaller businesses, you know, many companies exhibit in trade shows, and they're either new or don't have a defined brand yet. You know, or let's just assume that all of the above statements are not accurate, and the company has an established brand, but the trade show budget gets slashed, right? Like you see this guy doing here. Any way you look at it, it comes back to the budget. Having enough money to do the project right is always the culprit.
And if you don't have enough money to do the project right, don't do it. I'm telling you, it's better to attend the show as an attendee than to do it, you know, and make it a half-hearted effort where you don't have enough money to do the things the right way.
So, and you know, speaking of budgets, as you can see here, this is from Skyline's trade show expense survey that they did. The graphics, or what we consider the branding portion of the trade show exhibit, is one of the lowest priorities in most trade show budgets. I mean, it's the thing that gets done last along with exhibit properties. The problem here is that you spend all the money to get to the trade show, and then, like John said, then you don't have enough consideration as what devoted to the branding of the booth. And you know, it's the identity of your company and what you want customers to remember. And if you don't want them to remember the horrible booth that you had up, don't do it that way. You know, really consider taking a portion of the other parts of your budget for the trade show and spending it on doing the right graphics, having them professionally done. I mean, you know, we always preach, just try to be consistent and try the right way. So leading in, right, to overcome these, trade show booths don't have to break the bank. Obviously, you can do simpler graphics and get the brand across correctly. If done properly, branding can be minimal and effective, right? And remember that everything in a booth is an extension of your company. We always talk about the people in the booth, right? Make sure they're dressed appropriately. Maybe you have logos on your T-shirts or logos on your polos or whatever that is. If they're supposed to be in suits, put them in suits. The extension of your brand. So obviously, just like anything else, presentation is key, right? This is my most copy-heavy slide of the day. And I know that those seem like very obvious general statements, but the experience tells us the simple rules are often overlooked, right? So to wrap up, right, standing out, right? The booths that stand out visually and don't rely on telling everything about the history of the company and what the company does are more effective. On top of drawing the attendees into their booth, they're also creating a lasting impression, which, like John talked about and Rob talked about earlier, that is the big thing. I mean, you're drawing these people into the booth. Make sure that counts. Make sure that impression counts with the right people, because those are potential customers. And then you're going to generate leads, right? The main goal is to generate those leads, so you should be doing that by preparing your booth, providing that experience, right? And then creating a positive brand experience. You don't want to, have somebody talking on the phone, like you said, or have all these words and people just say, I don't even know what that is, I'm just going to pass it right up. Because going into the third, you're building that relationship. Again, it's all about that brand, right? It's accomplished through communication, and the graphics and the visual branding gets that trade show attendee into your booth. And the people you have staffing your booth should continue that relationship with them. It's their job to speak all the words that you had wanted to put inside of your booth graphics, right? They're continuing that conversation, building a relationship.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, when it comes to the design, the look, and the catch, and you tie everything together, if I was to boil it down to one thing, it's if we do everything right and we drive a certain amount of traffic there, when we do everything right, not only does it represent and give the good impression to the people who we have coming in that we have planned, but we're trying to catch the eye of the non-planned attendee. One of the things Rob was talking about is how people plan on where they're going to go in what booth. Let's say you don't happen to be on somebody's hit list. By having the right-looking booth and having everything put together the right way, the non-planned attendee will come and see you, thus improving your hit ratio. And that's what you're trying to do with this. Not just the people who are coming, but the people that might not be coming and are attracted to it because of the look. Anything else there, Patrick?
Nope, that's the last.
All right. Patrick, thank you so much. Please hang around. We got some questions for you. We'll make sure we hit you coming out here, okay? All right, so let's wrap up here. Last couple things. First, countdown schedule. Assemble your list of to-dos in a 60 to 90-day pre-show countdown schedule. Have milestones, benchmark activities, and who are the responsible parties, okay? Who has to call, who has to email, who has to make the sample calendar, who has to do this, who has to do that. A countdown schedule, and check these things off so these things are getting done, all right? If you need some examples of this, please let me know. I've got about 50 of them. I can get you these types of things. Next, set goals and track their success. Remember what I said. This is not a vacation. We're not going to New Orleans because we want to go to Bourbon Street or to Vegas because we want to hit the Strip. We're here to get business. You need to set activity and productivity goals for the show staff. For example, goals for badges scanned, contacts made, informational profiles attained, appointments and demos set on an hour-and-hour, day-to-day basis. Then reward these folks on a similar basis for their attainment. Gift certificates, cash awards, those are all good ideas. Also have an overall show winner with a reward for the most effective staffer. Make going to a trade show an honor, not a drudgery, and the reward has to be for the best doing the best. You want people to be excited to go to trade shows, not because it happens to be in LA, but because the last person that went there won an iPad. That actually was not the attendee, but was one of the staffers. He won the iPad because he was so good, because he scanned so many badges and got so many leads. Make it an honor. You also need to track everybody's statistics, show to show. Who's the best? When are they the best? Was it a fluke? Are they consistently strong performers? Then when we have this information and you choose the staff for the next the next trade show you have, you can be smarter about it. This guy did better here. This guy did better here. She did better here. She was the best all the way throughout. Now you can start making business decisions because you've got actionable data to do things. You maximize your investment by having the best information. If you need the tools for tracking, again, stuff that I have, please let me know. Finally, how much time do you actually have? All right, stick with me here, all right, because this is an important factor here. Many people think about the trade show as when you're going to be there. And most trade shows, if we were to generalize and homogenize the timetable, most trade shows run, from that, if we're going to say if we're going to give it a time frame, they go from that, 10 a.m. How come my pen's not working? They go from, come here you. They go from 10 a.m. to 3 or 4, okay, somewhere in that ballpark, all right? So let's say, 4:30, okay, 10 a.m. and close the time 4:30 over a 3-day period. That means you have 20 hours, okay, actual in your booth, 20 hours. But, okay, what else do you have, okay? You have 6.5 hours a day, so let's look at that. Not quite a full business day, you say. Well, let's look at it a little bit more. Now what about those additional hours? What happens between 8 and 10? Are we just sitting around picking our nose? What are we doing? I mean, between 8 and 10, are we taking clients to lunch? That's 2 more hours that we could be talking to people. What about after 5, okay? 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Do you take somebody for drinks? Do you take them to dinner? Are you guys having a suite? Are you planning appointments? What are you doing? If you average everything in, you have up to 35 hours over 3 days, okay? Or just about, 10.5 hours, I'm sorry, about 10.1, 10.2 hours a day. Point of the story is that's a lot of time. 10 hours a day is a lot of time to be talking to customers. Now you might say, well, hey John, when do I eat? When do I relax? Well, good question. You eat 3 times a day if that's what you're used to, but there's one small twist. Don't waste time eating alone. Don't waste time going with somebody else in your booth or some person you met, whether it be a girl or guy, whatever. Having a meal with your coworkers don't count. If you happen to be in the same town that family happen to live in or friends live in, that doesn't cut it. Utilize your meal times, your eating times for meeting with potential clients. Meet with strategic alliances. Remember, business trip, not vacation. If you did your calls, you prepped before the show, then you should have some eat and meets lined up before you get there. Always keep some time open for new contacts too, because during the show, obviously, you're going to meet folks. So you shouldn't be so booked where every hour of the day is taken care of. When you show up to the show, have some open time to be making appointments while you're there with the contacts you're made. Because if you've done everything right up to now with the design and bringing people in like Patrick and Rob's been talking about, then you're going to be catching some of these non-planned attendees. Have some open time, but you have up to 35 hours over 3 days. Okay, use that time. Don't use it to sit around. Don't go sit in a sports bar. Don't go to the casino. Spend time making business. Go back to Vegas another time on your dime because of all the money you made at the trade show. End of speech. All right. So let's wrap up today. So let's kind of tie everything together now. We talked about everything you need to get people in the door. We talked about what things should start to look like when they're in the door. We're talking about the things that has to happen before we even get to that point, all the logistics. We talked about the consistency of the brand. We threw a lot of things at you today. And that's all these things that you've got to think about before a trade show begins. If you don't, I promise you, your trade show is going to be just an absolute bomb before you even walk in that door. Okay, so today, our raffle, winning the Knowing Doing Gap, How Smart Companies Turn Knowledge into Action by Robert Sutton, is David St. John of TeachSmart. David, you still on the line there? Absolutely. All right, David. David, you win that. I'll make sure that you get that. Any other questions about the book, David, please make sure you contact me. But the winner of the Knowing Doing Gap, How Smart Companies Turn Out was David St. John of TeachSmart. Also, get free access to Sold magazine. Sold is a monthly digital sales magazine helping sales professionals. I've got to tell you, not only because I'm a contributor to this magazine, but the content in the magazine that you get is fantastic. Sign up for it online, www.soldlad.com/subscribe. It's really good content. Anybody who's in sales, it gives you something that you can do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis for your sales. Remember to check out the fantastic sales forum at matriximpact.com/FSF. always updating with different articles, different sales tips for you. Also, folks, remember, when you guys get a copy of this webinar, you will also be getting a copy of Rob's contact information as well as Patrick's contact information. So anything about design of the booths, anything along those lines, contact Patrick. And if any of those lead generation devices that you thought sounded interesting, give Rob a call, but you'll be getting all their contact information, phone number, email, the whole 9 yards. You'll be getting that with a copy of the presentation. And finally, you can either make sales or make excuses, but you can't do both. And folks, it doesn't get any more truer than in the trade show world. You can make excuses why you didn't do this or didn't do that, and you wind up having a bomb of a show. And the neat thing is, it's a microcosm of sales. What you're willing to put into this show is what you're willing to get out of it. Folks, that's all we got for now. We're going to hang out for a little while and take some questions. We've got a lot of them here, so please feel free to stay in the line and offer any questions you might have. All right. Let's see, staff, we still got you here, Rob, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay, first question we've got for you, Rob. Rob, do you have any statistics on the MOBA decoder and what kind of hit rates and, people who had success? Do you have any, I'm sorry, apologize. That's from Mary in Pasadena. Mary wants to know if you had any statistics for MOBA decoder, if you had anybody, like any case studies for that.
I do have some case studies. I apologize, I don't have anything with me right now.
All right.
Mary, if Mary would like to send me an email, I'd
absolutely.
be happy to get her some case studies.
Sounds good. I'll make sure we'll get that off. Okay, next question then is for Patrick. Patrick, how much does an average design for a booth for a 10 by 10 trade show cost? And I keep on messing up. This one's from Teddy in Picayune, Louisiana.
Well, I mean, typically you'll run between $3,000 and $5,000 for the trade show booth design.
Okay, and also they want to know, follow-up, what's necessary for that when you say design? Does that include the stand-up for the booth and all that kind of stuff too?
No, the stand-up is separate.
Can you help them with that? Can you help them, figure that?
Absolutely. Yeah, when we do branding for it, we actually spec out what booth designs, meaning the actual setup that we recommend based on the space and the client. We always do everything custom, so we talk about what the needs are, what booth or what trade show conferences they'll be going to, and then we figure out what kind of space that they need, and then from there we look at the graphics. Gotcha.
And we've got Piotr, or how do you pronounce that, Piotr? Can you chat that over to me? Oh, just pronounce it Peter. We have Peter from Belarus. And Peter's question is for me, actually, and what he wanted to know was specifically when it comes to staffing the booth, what are you looking for in a staffer? Well, Peter, here's what I look for in a staffer. It's real simple. I'm looking for that person who he should be or she should be the best salesperson I have, because the best salesperson I have is outgoing, aggressive. It's not going to waste time. It's going to make sure that every minute is accounted for, because his time or her time is worth money. There's nothing worse than a salesman that just goes there and thinks, like I said, that they're on a vacation. The best business people, the best salespeople treat their time like it's the most valuable commodity, because guess what? It is. So that's the type of person you want. And they're generally the best salespeople. All right. Now here's the kind of person that you don't want, and this might be an easier question to answer. The kind of person you don't want is booth fodder, is what I call that. Patrick had brought up the point of when you have an administrator, running the what the booth should look like and all that. Well, the reason why that's a problem is because they're not good at that. The same thing goes to who you would staff the booth. You don't want to staff the booth with people who don't spend their time in front of people. If it's an engineer, okay, if that person is not a sales engineer and understands how to sell, I don't want just an engineer there with nobody else, okay? You might have an engineer there to teach a class, but on average, engineers aren't the best people to be there. Or, in terms of, bigger picture, a lot of times we're talking about admin folks, the coordinators. They are really, really good at managing things behind the scenes and moving things along, but that's the reason why they do what they do. Salespeople stand in front of the folks and talk to them. not all the time are administrators comfortable talking and relating their, what they do. So you might think, well, gosh, I should have her there, and that counts as a staff because, she does that or he does this. Well, in theory, you're not off because, that person can help coordinate things and do stuff, and we're going to talk about some of that at the next webinar. But the problem is you have that person, you count them as a staffer, and you expect them to be able to man the booth and ask questions, and you're rolling the dice on that. I mean, you're playing chicken with the devil on that. Don't do that to yourself. That's your question, Peter? All right. Next question. We got another Peter, actually, but this is P-E-T-E-R, and he's from, where are you from, Pete? San Antonio. Peter from San Antonio's got a question for Patrick. Patrick, what's the most, how do you say that? Let me just put it in my words. I can't quite make it out and how he's saying it. What's the most the grand design that you've ever did? How much did it cost? The biggest trade show booth.
It was relatively inexpensive. It was about $15,000-$20,000. When it was all said and done, it was closer to 20, but it started off about 15.
What did it entail? When was it the 10 to 15? Was that just the design, or did that include the booth too?
No, it did not include the booth at all, but it was a more three-dimensional design of a booth.
He's asking a follow-up. He's asking, who would you recommend, that can provide, the actual booth product, the hardware itself?
Well, we've used Skyline before, and Skyline's a great provider of the actual setup. So whether it's a three-dimensional booth or if it's just a 10 by 10 or a backdrop.
Okay.
They even have things as small as just the banner stands.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Next question is from Bruce right here in Cleveland, Ohio, and Bruce has a question for Rob. Rob, you still there?
Yeah.
I was going to say, otherwise I got to wake you up there, Rob. In terms of what Bruce's question is in terms of the Litho Decoder. Is that something that you produce? Is that something that he'd have to get produced and you just give him the code? How does that work?
No, that's something we take care of the whole thing. So we help set up the parameters of what you want it to, what kind of prizes you want to offer. We help with and getting everything produced.
Okay. Bruce, answer your question?
So I've got, he'll have my contact information if he wants to contact me directly.
Okay. Gwendolyn from Connecticut is typing in. Gwendolyn? And this question is for me. And Gwendolyn asks, All right. Gwendolyn wants to know more about at the booth and the qualifying. Gwendolyn, I apologize. For today, what I'm trying to do is really compartmentalize because I could get into a whole lot of stuff about what's happening at the booth. But for today, we're going to stay away from that. Now, if you want to know more, make sure that you tune in to the next webinar. When you get your webinar announcement, make sure you sign up for it, and we'll be covering exactly, the questions to ask. But, for right now, I'm not going to get into it. So I'm sorry if that's not the right answer for you. Feel free to give me a call or email me, and we can talk about it offline. But, for the purpose of today, we're not going to get into that. Sorry about that. All right. Next question is for Rob. Rob, do you, I'm sorry, and this is from Frank, also here in Cleveland. Frank wants to know about, the games. And I particularly talked about the wheel, but he wanted to know, he saw some of the other things like the one-arm bandit and that kind of stuff. How much what's the, the upside of some of those costs, and what's the low side of some of the costs for these games that you can get?
Well, it depends on, some of these games we can already have. We might have a warehouse that's on site, like we have one out in Vegas, so we don't have to ship anything out there. It really could run from, $300 to, $2,500 depending on what it is, how many days, and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So, and this is a rental thing. Would you buy it? Does anyone ever buy these products?
We could, but unless somebody's going to keep it for about a week, they're better off just renting it.
Gotcha. And this one's coming from me. This is from Ann in Poughkeepsie. Ann wants to know about lead generation, and she's asking specifically in terms of how many touches should, be, is there a magic number? And Ann, here's the answer for you. There's no magic number, but it's got to be at least 3. At least 3. The nice thing is, if you incorporate some of Rob's ideas with some of the neat stuff that he has, you can do, minimum of 3 with some really, really unique ideas in there. So it doesn't just have to be a letter and then a brochure or as I talk about, doing a personal formal invite. You can really have some really cool, fun things. So it could be it could be the invite. It could be, a game piece. Could be the phone call following up on the 2 things, and then it might be one last reminder touch. It could be a brochure, a postcard, something like that before the actual show, maybe a week before the show to remind them. Right, so there's a lot of different things you can do. There's no magic number. That's going to be really, really based on what you're trying to do at that show, theme, what you're trying to do, get done there, what are your goals for the show, how many people you're trying to get in, how much money, all that kind of thing. And one of the numbers that we try and base around on is 20%, or I'm sorry, 20 times, meaning 20 times the return on investment. If you do things correctly in the pre, during, and post-show, you should see a minimum of a 20 times return on your dollar. So every dollar spent, you should see, $20 back. It's as simple as that. And there's no saying, what's, the better number and how many. All I can tell you is what we're trying to get to. I can give you a better answer if you tell me the show, and we can go into some of the specifics. But, minimum 3, and make it different. And make it a series, but make it consistent. All right, got another question. We've got a question from Danielle. Is it Yep, Danielle. And Danielle's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I can't believe I'm taking a question from somebody from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, being that I live in Cleveland, but I'll do it. All right, Danielle. Danielle has a question for Rob, and what she's wondering is it's about the she saw the black light, and is that probably the least expensive of the options that you have there, the black light one?
I would say it's a close one. I mean, certainly it is, because you don't have to rent a black light from us or from anybody. I mean, you could use something that you might already have. But from the standpoint of printing, the playing card one too is inexpensive. There's just, especially if we already use a die that we already have. So I'd say those 2 would be the least expensive and probably pretty close. She's
got a follow-up. She wants to know, it seems like the way she phrased it is, it seems like some of these things are things she can do herself without actually involving, another company. Is that right?
Absolutely. There's things you can think of that you can do. What you're trying to do is come up with a unique way to give them an incentive to come to your booth. And if you want to, send them something, send them 1 glove, tell them to come to the booth, pick up a second glove, a glove that you bought at Target. That's the whole idea behind it. So absolutely.
So yeah, exactly. It's just about the creativity, Danielle. Just about finding what that unique thing is, and it doesn't necessarily you don't have to have a big campaign for it. But there's a lot of things out there, and that's stuff that Rob or myself can help you out with if you got any kind of questions. All right. Now you guys might wonder the reason why there hasn't been any questions for Patrick recently is because Patrick logged off. So it's not that he's not getting any questions. It's just nobody's here to answer the design questions right now, just so you all know. All right, got another question for me, and the question is specifically on the countdown schedule. And I'm sorry, let me make sure I read this right. Yep. Gregor's reaching out to us from the Polyarny Inlet. Where is this? It's in Russia. Gregor wants to know about the. I'm sorry. Make sure I'm having a hard time getting through this one. I apologize, Gregor. Gregor, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to jump off on this one. I can't get through that. The Cyrillic language, the Cyrillic writing. I don't understand it. I apologize. All right, we'll move. We'll keep on moving. I've got. Who do I got here? Steven. Steven in, where are you at? Steven's in South Bend. He's got a question for Rob. And the question is, what's the best return on investment you've ever seen from people using one of your, and he didn't specify, any one of your trade show devices, your lead generation techniques?
You know what, I would say that the Litho Decoder has always been pretty successful. And the key to that is distribution and making sure that, you're using a list of attendees that's fairly accurate. And if you can get titles of people, that's even better, so you can weed out the people that you most want to see and send up to only them. We've had really good response rates with that piece.
Gregor's back, and Gregor is able to he's asking about the countdown schedule and specifically. And Gregor, to answer your question, what he's asking about the countdown schedule is, exactly who should be assigned what and how should be assigned. Well, Gregor, again, this is one of those depends questions, meaning it depends on what exactly you're doing. But I'll tell you this, in terms of overall activities, you should look at your staff very organically. What are their skill sets? What do they do well? What do they do wrong? And make sure that the people that do things right are assigned with the things that are necessary, for their skill set. For example, you might have a sales and marketing coordinator, and that sales and marketing coordinator might be just an absolute monster, a beast at organization. You hope that person is at any rate. If they're a beast at organization, you want to make sure that they're involved in such as getting all the things that are necessary, calling the company, getting booth space, a lot of logistical things that have to happen, hotel rooms, all this kind of stuff, figuring all that, those kind of people. You've got somebody who's really good writing, you got somebody who's really creative. Well, that person you might want to assign working on putting together some of the pieces. And now another question that might come up for Gregor and the other people in the audience, we still got about 85 people hanging out there with us. Might come up in the audience is, well, John, don't you have the marketing departments that companies should be doing that? Well, yeah, you have companies that have marketing departments, and yes, they should take the brunt of a lot, but you should also involve the feet on the ground, the ground level salespeople and ground level marketing people who will be attending the trade show. Get them involved with the design of the pieces. Get them involved with the content that you're going to be putting out there. Don't leave it for somebody sitting back in a cubicle who all they're doing is crunching numbers or crunching information that they take in all day. Get the people involved. Everybody should be involved in this. This trade show, any trade show you go to, can be a potential huge impact. Think of that, $20 to every $1 you invest. Anybody would be a fool if they didn't take advantage of an investment opportunity like that. And you're a fool if you don't involve everybody that you possibly can that are going to be responsible for the trade show, particularly if people are going to be at the trade show. Make them involved. Get them involved. And by getting them involved, they're going to be that much better when they're at the actual trade show. All right. Any more questions? Starting to dry up now a little bit. Patrick's got about 17 questions he's got to get answered. Let's see here. What else we got?
You should make him send him an email with all the questions and make him answer them.
I'm going to. He's going to have some homework tonight.
Right. Can't get out of that.
Oh, I got it. I got another one. I got one from William, and William's question is about setting goals. Okay, this one's for me, and he's asking specifically, how do you set up goals? How do you do that? Well, specifically, it's simple, but again, it's based on your situation. You've got to know, what a trade show could possibly yield, and you've got to throw your rock down somewhere. There's no way of saying I'm going to make 15 and that should be the number. I mean, you're really pulling a number out, but you can pull it out based on the attendance that you had last year or based on potential attendance this year. But once you set those numbers, you can if you're the person responsible, okay, you can sit there and tweak them as the days go by, as the trade show goes. So if 15 is too much based on if the show attendance is low, well, okay, scale it back a little bit. Don't just put some ridiculous number out there that they can't attain just to see if they're going to run after like a dog going after a bone. That's just you're just going to demotivate people. If the trade show's slow and you've got an unrealistic goal, ratchet it down a little bit. Give the people a chance to win this. You want to make it stretch, but not so far that they can't reach it. Okay. And if they can't reach it, what's the purpose of doing it? They won't be motivated. You want them to be motivated. You want to give them something that they can win. And again, I know it sounds like a lot, but you want to be measuring this thing on an hour-to-hour, day-to-day basis, okay? You want to be looking at this thing in the way of how things are actually working in the dynamic of that show, because that's going to give you so much more information when you go to plan the next show. Saying, boy, this guy was great after lunch. This guy was great in the morning. This girl was good all day, so on and so on and so on. Learn that information so you know how to utilize your staff. Be smart. This is about having the right information, planning your show correctly, and more importantly, executing your show correctly. Let's see, Mary Jane. Mary Jane has a question for Rob. Rob? Okay. Let me see if I can get this. She's typing, and she's typing. All right. Rob, what she's asking about specifically is on the MOBA decoder. And yes, it's not dissimilar from the lithograph question. Is that, do you handle all the design on that too, or is there somebody else? Do they have to have website designers, or how does that work?
No, we would handle everything with that.
Okay.
We would help you come up with, just taking care of all the backdoor, providing the number that gets texted to. The URLs will set all that up. From the pieces, it's all tied into the software that runs the game.
Would you work with their IT department stuff to so they could have links off their website and all that kind of stuff?
Yes.
All right.
Definitely. And that's something that it's a pretty streamlined process, but it works out pretty well.
All right. What else we got here? Nope. I think Patrick. Yeah. I think that's about it for today. Anybody else got any questions before we log off? I know we went a little long today, everybody. We still got somewhere in the 80-ish number of people here left on here. Thank you so much for hanging on. I know we went a little long today, but I think you see, it was very, very content rich. There's a lot to cover. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? Let's see, going 3 times? Nope, no more questions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. From John Kolensik, who is your host, Rob, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
All right.
Or evening, depending on where you're at.
Yep, exactly. Afternoon, evening. It's afternoon somewhere or evening somewhere. That's for guaranteed. Guys, look forward to seeing you at the next one. And remember, the next one is about what happens at the show itself. The next webinar is going to be talking about what do you do at the show itself. Look forward to talking to you soon. And remember, you can either make sales or make excuses, but you can't do both. We are out of here.